Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Ask Me Anything for the CrossFit Linchpin private track, the Facebook group. Today is May 20th. Boggles my mind. Time is flying by. 2021. And I'm going to have now that date, what dates pop into my head now is that the end of June is when my wife's supposed to have our third child, our little girl. And every week that goes by, I realize just how close that is. So, things are already busy, and they're about to get even busier quickly. So, with no further ado, let's get right in. The most upvoted question was from Robin T. and says, can we get Boz, aka Adrian Bozman, not Brian Bosworth, Adrian Bozman to be a guest answerer for a future AMA. And Boz is obviously my counterpart on the Ask Me Anything, on the Very Not Random podcast that Beyond the Whiteboard puts on and hosts. And it's funny that you ask that, Robin, because I had basically the same idea go through my head, that I would very much like to get Adrian on here. Now, we're not located in the same geographical place, or else I'd have him standing next to me. Maybe there's some way to share a screen, or I gotta give him the login information to Facebook. I'm not sure. We'll figure it out one way, shape, or form. But I like that, and I'm in favor of it. Don't know when it might happen. Okay, next most upvoted question was from Corey C, and it involved scheduling and rest days. So let's see. Okay, Corey C, here we go. In your programming for the prescribed daily workouts, is the rest day essential to be taken on the day that you program it? We program rest days on Thursdays and Sundays. I usually rest on Wednesdays. So I do Wednesday's workout on Thursday, and then Friday's workout on Friday, etc., etc. The Friday one seems to hit me pretty hard, being that I'm tired from Wednesdays, etc., etc., etc. So basically, I was just wondering if the rest day, when they take it compared to when I program it, how does that have an effect? Does it have an effect? So, short answer, can the rest day be moved to fit your life? Yes. There you go. Okay, that's the answer to the question. Yes, it can. Of course, there's some nuance to that. You can move it around because life has little regard for your schedule. Can you hear my dog barking in the background in the garage? It's very annoying. Life has little regard for your schedule, or when you can and can't get to the gym, other duties that you have involved, so on and so forth. And so if life demands that, hey, Thursday doesn't work well for a rest day, you can by all means take it on a different day, and that'll work just fine. Stand by 1 second here. It's open. So sorry for the pause there. Handling some life issues. So take the rest day whenever you need to take the rest day. But the other part of that is, are the rest days programmed on the days that they're programmed for a certain reason? Are the workouts placed in a certain order for a certain reason, etc., etc.? The answer to that is 100% yes. So everything that is laid out as to when the rest days are, the repetitions in any workout, the loading in a workout, whatever it happens to be, the movement, whether we're going below parallel, we're going overhead, short time domain, long time domain, none of that is just randomly placed anywhere. Everything is placed and designed to be where it is for a very specific reason, and it all takes into account where we've been, how you should feel in that day, where we're going, when rest would be needed, etc., etc., to ideally make everything that we're doing yield improvements for everybody, but also be sustainable in that work-rest-life ratio. However, like we said, life doesn't care about that. Everyone's life is a little bit different, so if life demands that you move things around, so be it. That's okay. And just don't be afraid to listen to your body, to experiment a little bit and just see how you feel. If a particular day tends to over and over be a little more taxing for you than normal because of how you've switched around days, then maybe give yourself the grace on that particular day, if that's a habit that seems to repeat, to, intensity is relative. Allow yourself to move at a slower pace or something like that so that you're still moving, you're still getting in the workout, but you are able to do it in a way that meets the demands of your life and works well for you. So yes, I mean, fitness is critical, right? You got to get it in for health and longevity. So if you have to shift things around, do what you got to do. Next question from Levi A. Levi, I think you actually had a couple questions today that were some of the most upvoted ones. Let's see. Okay, this one won't take long because this was a fun one. Basically, Levi says, heard you mention on a previous Very Not Random podcast, the one that I do with Boz, that your wife was doing gymnastics for 4 hours every day at a young age while you were busy stuffing your face with Oreos, which is completely true. This leads me to two very important questions. Regular or double stuffed or overstuffed Oreos with milk or in a waffle cone? So I will say that, great question. Anytime we can talk about Oreos, it's a great question. Regular Oreos, just regular Oreos. Family was poor, couldn't afford double stuffed, that's for darn sure. Nothing fancy was going on in the young Sherwood household. We were strapped for cash, so yeah, regular Oreos. This could be another rabbit hole I won't go down, but the house that I grew up in was built up in New England. Some things are quite old. It was built in 1820, and when we moved into the house, it had no electricity, no lights, no nothing. We had to put that in over the course of quite some time, and we had the only heat that was in the house was there was coal stoves in various rooms, and so in a winter in New England, our house was heated by, up there was coal companies. The coal company would come, they would put this chute through a truck into like a window that went into the basement, into the cellar, as we would say up there in New England, dump a huge pile of coal down in the cellar, and then myself as a young man was forced to go down there with a bucket and lug coal from downstairs to keep all the various stoves located around the house stoked so that we could have heat in the winter. And it was a coal stove was also how we had to cook. We didn't have an electric stove or anything like that. Like, so my family literally cooked on a coal stove. So it was unique. It was an old house. No electricity. That was the heat. That's how we cooked. And so old that my mother actually fell through the floor in the bathroom. The floor just was rotted out. She fell through the floor. Uninjured, luckily. But anyway, regular Oreos. Regular Oreos. Cost was an issue. Okay, next most upvoted question was from Adrian S. Let's see, about the zombie apocalypse crew. Adrian, where's your question, sir? Where's your question? Adrian S., here we go. If the zombie apocalypse breaks out, you are very prepared for it, but not as prepared as our leader, Jennifer R. None of us are prepared as her. I agree with that. If you could bring 3 items with you for your journey into the wasteland, what would those 3 items be? I would bring, one of them would be a human being. And I don't want to date myself here, but I would bring MacGyver. And then in addition to bringing MacGyver, I would bring a Swiss Army knife and I would bring duct tape. And if I had MacGyver, a Swiss Army knife, and duct tape, I fear nothing. Next question. It's from Patrick S. And it is about, let's see. It's about overcoming like an injury or an obstacle or something. Where is it? Give me a sec here. I'm scrolling. Okay, here we go. From Patrick S. What is the most difficult setback you've gone through in your years of CrossFit training, be it injury or illness? And what are the most important things you learned regarding the recovery from it? So I took some liberties with this. Okay, Patrick, I hope you don't mind. I took some liberties. Because initially you said most difficult setback, and then in parentheses you put injury or illness. So, got umbilical hernia, separated my AC joint in a motorcycle wreck. So I've come back from those things. But when I look back at one of the most difficult things that's led to the most progress, and I know this is a recurring theme that we hit, it was not a physical injury. It was something that occurred between the ears, and that's been over the years. Ideally, learning to better control or reduce just ego, really, and be a more humble, open-minded person. The ego, though, the ego is a killer, right? That's why one of the big things we say at Linchpin is to remove ego and embrace scaling. So relating to your question, Patrick, if an injury did occur, like when I separated my AC joint in that motorcycle wreck, an injury can be a really tough thing to deal with no matter what. You're bummed out, you can't work out, you got to modify things. No matter what, it's going to be a bummer. But it's going to be a huge bummer and significantly tougher to deal with if you haven't taken some time to get your ego in check. But if you have got your ego in check, then it's a lot easier, not perfect, but a lot easier to deal with any setback that comes your way, because you realize it's not the end of the world that you have to scale or modify a workout or a movement for weeks or months. Whoop-de-doo. You're going to be just fine. And will some things maybe slip down the leaderboard? Yeah, probably. But if you realize, because your ego's in check, that your long-term health and fitness will still be fine, and that your value or worth as a person isn't tied to your fitness level or the leaderboard or time in a workout, well then dealing with that injury, whatever it happens to be, is so much easier to do, because you have the perspective about what's actually important, and you're not making a molehill into a mountain. So I would say just the years-long development of trying to, work on myself personally and address ego and other things like that can be just so destructive. And don't get me wrong, everybody has an ego, so I certainly still have one. I just try to manage it so that it doesn't derail my life and relationships and things like that. I'll just say this. Everyone in the world has an ego, right? Everybody. But there are certain communities of individuals that you can be darn sure have some egos that are so huge that it'd be tough to fit them in a room. Being a former SEAL, I'm here to tell you, ego is very aware of it. I've had to deal with it and make sure that it doesn't derail things. And anyway, that has probably been one of the biggest things to work on, to overcome, and the benefits are huge both in the gym and out of the gym when you start to make some progress in that area. And I don't think it's never something which is finished and completed, right? It's just something which has to be aware of it, manage it, make sure that you're in control of it, it's not in control of you, and then the sun comes out and the clouds go away, and whatever decision that you have to make, so much easier to make. So I would say that's one of the biggest ones. So ego and refined sugar, those are the killers. Get those two in control. Okay, moving on to the next topic here. See, Levi, I thought you had another question. Next most upvoted one was from Levi A, asking about the Varied Not Random podcast. Let's see where that is. Okay, here we go. Loving the Varied Not Random podcast. What drove you to start it? Seems like some of the discussions are things that have already been covered in the Linchpin conversations. Is this you and Boz, working to help the overall CrossFit ecosystem and what happens in gyms and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, first of all, again, stoked that you're enjoying it. You can find that Beyond the Whiteboard's hosting that. You can find it on iTunes and Spotify. It's on their YouTube channel. Beyond the Whiteboard is phenomenal, and that's what I use to host CrossFit Linchpin. Phenomenal. The people who run it are phenomenal. They're in this space, in the CrossFit space, in the fitness space, for the right reasons. They are CrossFitters at heart. They've been around a long time. They have the interest of the community as high as anyone that I've ever seen. Sure, they're a business. Sure, they want to do well, right? I mean, you got to keep the lights on and pay your employees, obviously. But there's a way to do that with integrity and a way not to do it with integrity. And Beyond the Whiteboard does it with integrity. And they do really care about the CrossFit community in general and putting out good information that will make the community stronger. You know, they believe in that whole a rising tide lifts all boats. And I have known those guys for a very long time, the people who own it and run it. And I was like, you guys need a podcast, really. You got a great platform to deliver it. You have a huge base that's growing. Like, you should have a podcast out there. And they said, why don't you start one? And I said, done deal. And I wanted to have a podcast with somebody else. You know, the Linchpin conversations are me just addressing, you know, the Linchpin community. But for the podcast, it's like, you know, I need somebody there with me. And I could not think of a better human being to have next to me than Adrian Bozman. And just the dude, as I've said before, is one of the sharpest, most underrated CrossFit intellectuals that I'm aware of. And if I could have him on the program, everything about it would be just better. And so we pulled it off. And yeah, there'll certainly be some overlap from topics that you've heard here on Linchpin Conversations, because I think we're like 170 episodes in, but the Very Not Random podcast is like 6 episodes in. So if we're going to talk about the big topics that need to get addressed, there'll absolutely be some overlap, without a doubt. So you'll hear some of the stuff there, you know, for sure. If you've listened to all the Linchpin Conversations, there'll be some repeat. But what will be cool is, even if there is repeat, you're going to get not only my perspective, which potentially you've heard before, but you might hear Adrian discuss it in a different way with different examples or have a slightly different take on it. And that in and of itself, even if the topic is the same, ideally will provide even more value. So I'm pretty stoked about that. I just want it, much like I want Linchpin Conversations to be a heck of a resource wherever you are in the space. If you're just a recreational CrossFitter, you're just an athlete, if you are a trainer or a coach, or if you are a gym owner, everybody should be able to benefit. So that's the goal. Let's see. Next question's from Eric CM, and this is about, okay, here we go. So this is where we might get into a rabbit hole, I'm not sure. So I took Eric's question and Gabriella's question, and I kind of put them together. So I'll read them both at the same time, because the answers, while not precisely the same, they do overlap, and this is the potential rabbit hole. So here we go. Eric asked, is there any benefit on incorporating traditional pump iron sessions at the end of a workout instead of the accessory work? Will it be an overload for the body? You know, what's the best way to do that? And so his question, good old school fashioned bodybuilding, pump stuff at the end of the workout instead of the accessory work, pros and cons, if you will. And then Gabriella asked, I think her question is a bit down the bottom, so let me scroll. Okay, then her question is weaknesses. If we have weaknesses, like for example, she mentions what I believe she thinks are some of hers, strict press, the barbell snatch, and rope climbs, what do you recommend? Is it enough to stick just to the program plus accessory work, or is it optimal or advisable to do some extra work specific for the weakness we've identified for ourselves? You know, should we substitute that specific work out for whatever the accessory work is every day? So both Eric and Gabriella are asking about doing some stuff after the workout. Eric more in the traditional pump session, and Gabriella working on weaknesses that she's identified. Okay, so here we go. For both of them, well, Eric, for yours, for the traditional pump session, could you do some at the end of the workout? Yes. Short answer is yes. Do whatever you want. You're free to do whatever you want, my friend. Rock on. Will it be too much? I don't know. Each person has a little bit different capacity for how much volume is too much, how much intensity is too much, and so if you add a little bit on, will life just become wonderful, or will you be a little bit extra tired? I can't give you the answer to that question. Depends how frequently you do it, how much volume it is, how heavy you're getting after it, how much rest you're giving your body. There's a whole bunch of factors that I can't answer on that. But you should absolutely feel free to experiment doing it and just really pay attention to your body and see how it's treating you. And you may have to dial it up or back or down depending upon your reaction to that stimulus. The other part of doing the bodybuilder pump stuff may be in place of the accessory work, which, by the way, have to say it, the accessory work is optional, right? It is not required. 100% optional all the time. You never have to do it for your whole life if you don't want to, and you'll be wonderfully fit. But if you do want to do it and you're ready for it, it's fantastic at shoring up weaknesses and just maybe breaking through a plateau that you've been, but you do not need to do it. So with that being said, Eric talking about the traditional bodybuilding pump kind of session, it just comes down to need versus want. Okay, now if you were just a cyborg robot and emotions and pleasure did not come into play at all, okay, everything was just a mathematical equation for you, it was an economics equation, well, which is going to provide more bang for your buck, more real world capacity and functionality and longevity and sustainability on planet Earth? The accessory work that we program, which are usually compound, multi-joint, classic functional movements, large loads, long distances quickly, versus bodybuilding work, which is traditionally more single joint isolation sort of movements. Without a doubt, the bodybuilding movements will not serve you as well for accomplishing work on planet Earth compared to what the traditional accessory work is this program. So if you're just a cyborg robot and that's what you were looking for, which delivers more bang for the buck, it's not even close. However, people are not cyborg robots, and there is an element of you've got to have fun. If you're not having fun, you're not going to stick around and do it. So what's the point? And so if you just love some bodybuilding pump sort of movements and they make you happy and they keep you fired up to hit the gym every day, and you know that you get to enjoy these pump movements that you love to do so much after you've kind of earned it, after you've done the workout of the day, I've got no drama with that at all. That's fantastic. Whatever keeps you fired up, keeps you moving forward, keeps you smiling about training, that has tremendous benefit, and that can't be overstated. That's a big deal. So Eric, that would be my answer to your question there. Now, for Gabriella, identified some specific weaknesses in functional movements, such as strict press, snatch, rope climbs, for example. Should she just stick to the accessory work, or should she tailor the accessory work specifically to these particular weaknesses that she has identified? I still go back to the other point that I made with Eric. The accessory work is optional. And truth be told, Gabriella, you could do no accessory work, and those weaknesses that you identified, they would improve. They may not improve at the rate that you would like them to improve. And I'm not saying that you're an impatient human, so please don't take it that way. But most human beings are impatient. And they just want to speed the process up. And so yes, they would improve over time, beyond a shadow of a doubt, based upon just doing the workout of the day. Step 2. If you did the workout of the day and the optional accessory work that I program every day, they would improve at an even faster rate based upon the functional movements and the variance that's put in to the optional accessory work. Now, the next part is, would they potentially improve even quicker if you tailored the accessory work each day based upon what you have accurately identified as your unique weaknesses? Yes, then that would potentially happen at an even quicker rate. So it all just depends upon what you're doing. But most people, you've identified 3 weaknesses there, right? I bet most of us have more than that, right? Most of us have a strict pull-up weakness. Gabrielle, I'm not sure what your strict pull-ups are. Maybe they're phenomenal. But if we tested everybody, you'd probably fall in there as well you know what? I got a bit of a strict pull-up weekness. So we could add that to the list. The list would just grow and grow and grow, because most of us have to improve in basically all areas because we're normal human beings. We got to improve the engine. We got to improve the body weight. We got to improve the barbell stuff. It's all, now, you might be better at some things than others. Maybe you do really have a great deadlift, so that doesn't need to be on the list. But most of our areas of things that we want to improve would be not 2 or 3. The list would be pretty good. And so doing the workout and doing the optional accessory work, if you're ready for it, will give you such a nice variety that it won't only increase those few weaknesses that you mentioned, but all the other areas as well that most likely need to get brought up a little bit too. But that being said, you could absolutely focus on just the stuff that you've identified and try to drive that forward just a little bit. Now, I've got some notes here so I don't get off track too much. Let's see. It's important that we don't get too distracted chasing shiny objects, and we don't unnecessarily put pressure on ourselves or think that we have weaknesses that we really don't. Okay? So here's what I mean by that. You've got a weakness, right? But compared to what? Is it compared to other people that you've seen on social media, a particular level on Beyond the Whiteboard? Do you have to scale something a bit more than something else? So, for example, I know that I have a weakness overhead. Like I said earlier, I separated my AC joint in a motorcycle wreck. I've got some bad stuff that happened to me in the military. My overhead capacity is terrible. It always has been. I have a dedicated, 100% identified weakness overhead. That being said, in what way has that weakness slowed me down in what I have to accomplish every day, living a life as a human being on planet Earth for the last 10 to 15 years? Absolutely nothing. Zilch. Zero. So my quote-unquote big weakness, when I look at my overhead lifts compared to other things, huge weakness, gotta take care of it. Well, why? What has it prevented me from doing? Literally nothing. Now, take that with a grain of salt. Obviously, me improving that will make me a stronger, fitter, more capable human, and that's a good thing. But when I give myself a weakness, it's important for me to say, in relation to what is it preventing me from doing? Is it just getting a better time on the leaderboard? Or is there something occurring in my life that isn't going well because of this quote-unquote weakness? So, that being said, just don't put too much pressure on yourself of like, I gotta take care of this thing, it's just really holding me back. It's probably not holding you back as much as you realize. And what I mean by that is, you can probably pursue improving it with more patience than people give themselves credit for these days. And now here, this is where the rabbit hole sets in, right? It's so easy, I think, with social media and following all these other people and maybe seeing where some other people are, and you think, well, that's where I should be as well, and then I need to get there really fast. And that is where I think the rabbit hole of social media and addiction and comparison being the thief of joy can put some things into people's heads that they now have this laundry list of things that they need to work on, when in all honesty, they really don't. They really don't. All you really need to do is warm up, work out, embrace relative intensity, scale when needed, make good decisions, ensure that you get enough rest, ensure that your nutrition is on point, and things will go in a positive direction. Truth. 100% truth. It's just easy these days to look on your phone, see what somebody else is doing, and suddenly you feel a bit inadequate. I'm not saying that's where you are, but just be careful of that trap. One of the best things I did on social media was to significantly reduce the amount of people that I follow. If I want to go check out what they're doing, I can type in their name into search, go see what they're doing, but it's not constantly in my feed. It's amazing. When, again, getting back to what we discussed earlier too, getting in control of your ego, doing that, and not letting comparison be the thief of joy, the sun comes out in your life. It really does. So, what I just mentioned, the warmth, the workout, rest, relative intensity, nutrition, that's the house, okay? That's the solid foundation, the walls, the insulation, the HVAC system. You're warm, comfortable. Life is fantastic. It's like the Three Little Pigs. You have built your house out of bricks if you're doing that, and you're solid. You just need to be patient, be consistent, and things will go in a fantastic direction. All these other things, which are valid things, by the way. I'd like to increase my strict press. Fantastic. I'd like to get better at rope climbs. Fantastic. Those are all great. Those are all small things in the house, as long as the house is built properly, right? Those are, should we move the couch from this wall to the other wall? You know what? Thinking about repainting the bedroom from dark blue to light blue. It's small things as long as the house was built properly and you're keeping everything just sturdy and well built. So give them the attention that they deserve, but don't make them out to be more than they are, and don't let them just stress you out. Okay, that's kind of one of the bigger issues as well. So I think that was about it. So yes, Gabrielle, you can certainly just do the workout of the day. You can do the workout of the day with the optional accessory work, and the things that you mentioned, they will certainly improve. We get in plenty of pulling and pressing and things like that in the optional accessory work. But if you wanted to tailor it specifically to a couple things that just you've targeted, and you have the desire to try to move at a bit of a quicker clip, absolutely go for it. Good to go. So yeah, that's about that. Have a wonderful day. Today's a rest day. I am currently working through an upcoming block of training. I've got all the workouts done. I've got the warm-ups done. I've got the accessory work in. And now my day today is going to be spent taking the prescribed workout of the day, massaging it to be the scaled option, massaging it to be the limited equipment option, and then again, massaging it to be the no equipment workout, and making sure that all of that stuff flows how it should flow. So that's what I'll be doing. And actually later on today, I'll be filming a Very Not Random podcast with Boz, and we'll be having our first guest on. So I won't spill the beans as to who that will be, but that should get posted in a couple weeks. I hope everybody enjoys it. And that's it. Have a great day, and we will talk again soon.